This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by SCHEELS and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Hello, welcome again to Midco Sports Magazine. Crafty is our theme this month, and not the devious or the tricky definition of the word, but the good kind of crafty, finding a way to get it done. We'll take you to Denver and visit the voice of the Colorado Rockies, a South Dakota guy who survived a famous plane crash, and that gave him a whole new view on his broadcasting career. And in Brookings, South Dakota, a 90-year-old running librarian with an amazing collection of index cards and some very entertaining stories to go with them. But up first, a first-year pitcher at the University of Minnesota-Crookston. And when you look at the box score, he looks like just any other starting pitcher. But when you see him on the mound, you get a deeper appreciation for how he has honed his craft. Here's Jody Norstedt.
Parker Hanson throws some serious heat. His determination is what you look for in a pitcher.
There's nothing that can really stop me from doing what I want to do.
I didn't expect him to be this good. I mean, throwing 90, 91, and one of the best pitchers in the conference, let alone on our team.
Take one listen to these next few words, and you understand that he's also armed with confidence.
I look at my arm as an ability to inspire.
Words that almost sound arrogant until you realize he's not talking about his throwing arm. Parker's first pitch was a curveball to his mother Barb on the day he entered this world.
We knew nothing about it before he was born. Off in the room, I heard somebody say, just so you're not surprised, your son was born without his left hand. You know, maybe some parents would be emotional about it. I was like, it's just a left hand. He's got a brain, he's gonna be fine.
Like usual, Mom was right. Parker grew up in his hometown of Hawley, Minnesota, just like any other active little boy. And this circle of grass, still imprinted in his backyard, displays the roots of his first passion.
Age of 2 or 3 is when I first got out there with a bat, and I think 3 or 4 is when I first got the glove on and started throwing. I was playing t-ball at 4.
Everybody was, always move up. Oh, here comes the boy with one hand, and out it would go. And from the time he was like 3 years old even, he'd get up in the morning, put his baseball pants on.
As a child, Parker never thought of being born without a hand as a problem. It was all he knew. It wasn't until he began going to school that his eyes were open to the potential obstacles that lie ahead.
I probably noticed for the first time in like first grade, or first or third grade, there was like a lyceum we had in the elementary, and there's a guy there that was paralyzed from the waist down from a bicycle accident, I believe. And he was like shooting bow and arrows and stuff, and that's the first time I heard the term handicap, explained as like limbs and stuff. So I came home from school one day and I just told my mom, I'm like,
He goes, Mom, did you know I was handicapped? Just like totally innocent. Did you know this, Mom? And I looked at him and I said, Parker, I said, there are people born with everything. Perfect bodies, perfect everything, are more handicapped than you because they don't try.
The challenge was finding something or someone that Parker could relate to, that he could look to as an inspiration. Enter former Major League pitcher Jim Abbott, one of the most captivating stories in baseball history. Despite being born without a right hand, Abbott pitched 10 years in the bigs, highlighted by a no-hitter with the Yankees in 1993.
I did my History Day project on him in 6th grade, so I learned a lot about him then. As I've gotten older, I've watched more highlights of him, just seeing his mechanics and what he does with one hand, and that's been a big help trying to just improve my game. I've talked to him over Twitter. I've direct messaged him on that, telling me never to give up on my dreams.
Parker was determined to make sure his dreams became a reality. His baseball career took off in his high school days at Hawley, and the attention surrounding him grew from casual fans to college coaches, including Minnesota-Crookston head coach Steve Gust.
As I kept watching him, he got better and better and better, and I'm thinking this kid has the tools to be a real good pitcher, and then with with everything that he's had to go through, you knew he was a good character kid, a good tough kid.
After spending his first year out of high school at a junior college near the Twin Cities, That tough kid now calls the Minnesota-Crookston campus home, and he's already proving to his teammates that his disability doesn't define him.
I mean, I knew that he would help out, and I didn't expect him to be this dominant because, I mean, every one of his starts, he's been just flat out dominant. Even if he's not had his best stuff, teams struggle with him.
Almost every game so far this year, someone's tried to get a bunt on me, and they're not successful yet.
He tucks his glove under his left arm, slides it on his right arm as soon as he pitches. He feels his position pretty well for only having one hand.
The way that he's thrived on the baseball field makes Parker's accomplishments truly remarkable. But as Parker knows firsthand, what good is his story if it doesn't help inspire? So he's preparing to follow in the footsteps of his role models, working on a minor in communications with hopes of someday being a motivational speaker.
I know there's times in life when you're dealing with one hand where you're low in confidence and you don't think you can do what other kids do. So if I can step in and help those kids think that they have what it takes and they can no matter what, then that's something I'll always try to do.
He already has his catchphrase, which might make a little more sense when you hear it this time.
I don't look at my arm as a disability, I look at my arm as an ability to inspire.
Words that aren't merely a quote, but an accurate description of Parker's life.
Honestly, I think if I would have had two hands, I don't know where I would have been. I don't know if I would be here in this situation. I don't know if I'd be in college sports even. But with one hand, it's motivated me to just prove everyone that doesn't believe me wrong.
And joined by Jody Norstedt in Fargo. All right, Jody, Parker says that he wants to do some motivational speaking when he is done with school, but what else does he see in his future?
Well, his major is in business management, and he hopes to one day open his own gym. Parker actually uses a special prosthetic for weightlifting and credits his time spent in the gym for his success on the pitching mound. Now, as for that motivational speaking career, that's already taking off a little bit. He spoke to a young man in Florida when the team was down there earlier this spring, and also plans to speak to a young man from Breckenridge, Minnesota. Both of those players trying to overcome the same obstacles that Parker has. He certainly has a heart for serving others, which is pretty awesome to see, Tom.
Up next on Midco Sports Magazine, survival and revival. You may have heard the Jerry Schemmel story before, but not like this.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by SCHEELS and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Our next story is about a man from Madison, South Dakota, who is doing his dream job right now as a play-by-play voice in Major League Baseball. But his journey to the broadcast booth has been anything but smooth. It took a catastrophic event to give him a new view and a new voice. Here's David Brown.
Baseball has always been a sport keen to the senses. The smell of fresh-cut grass, the sight of sunshine illuminating a bright blue sky, and that gratifying crack of the bat. For the Colorado Rockies, the backdrop at Coors Field in Denver is perfect. About the only thing wrong this afternoon is the outcome for the home team, an 11-3 loss to the Tampa Bay Rays.
Well, Geyer's on the run. He's going to catch up to this shy of the track.
But if there's any sense that Jerry Schemmel isn't enjoying his job behind home plate, it doesn't come across in the one sense he's known for, his voice.
Swing and a miss on a slider. There's a good-looking pitch by Gonzalez-Germain. I'm doing Major League Baseball. I get to come to the ballpark every single day. To me, that's fun, whether we lose or win.
For all of the sounds of the diamond, Jerry's perspective is a sight that gives him the best view of the game. Growing up in Madison, South Dakota, Jerry was constantly involved in athletics year-round, but he gravitated toward the ballpark.
I love to play baseball and decided that was what I was going to focus on and walked on at South Dakota State.
After 2 years at SDSU, Jerry transferred to Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas. Knowing his college career wouldn't translate to the pros, Jerry wanted to stay involved in athletics in any way possible, and decided broadcasting was the route to take.
It was doing high school football and basketball games in Topeka, Kansas, at a little country station there. I honestly made $10 a game. That was back in the early 80s, and I loved it. I thought that was a lot of money, but I enjoyed every moment of that, too.
Jerry's big break came when the Topeka Sizzlers came to town. As part of the old Continental Basketball Association, Jerry called Sizzler's games for 4 years and made plenty of friends in the CBA along the way. That included Commissioner Jay Ramsdell, who wanted Jerry to help him promote the league full-time as deputy commissioner.
At the time, I wasn't really sure I wanted to give up the broadcasting, but I thought, let's just give this thing a shot. It's a great opportunity. I was very close with Jay. A new beginning for me. I was going to move to Denver and start this new career, so I gave it a shot.
July 19th, 1989. After being bumped on 4 straight flights, Jerry and Jay finally boarded United Airlines Flight 232 from Denver to Chicago. They were hoping to eventually make it to Columbus, Ohio for league business. Because of the full flight, Jerry and Jay sat in separate rows. A little more than 1 hour into the flight, Jerry heard something he didn't expect.
The first thing I thought, to give you an idea of what this first sounded like, then felt like, I thought a bomb had gone off.
One of the DC-10's 3 engines had failed. The plane's autopilot was disengaged, and its brakes were rendered useless. Captain Alfred Haynes was calm but realistic over the PA system.
At one point he said, I'm not going to kid anybody, this is going to be rough. Another time he said, you need to be ready for this crash because we are not going to land safely.
Thanks to Captain Haynes and the crew, the flight was able to circle for 45 minutes while getting all 296 people on board ready for impact.
Okay, so we have almost no controllability. Very little elevator and almost no aileron. We're controlling the turns by power.
The plane finally hit the ground in Sioux City, Iowa, at more than 250 miles per hour.
Immediately inside the plane, complete chaos. To be honest, there were bodies being thrown about as soon as we hit. Some were still strapped in their chairs. The chairs had given, and they were thrown in their chairs. And we started breaking into pieces, and fire and smoke was everywhere. And then it wasn't till we came to a halt, and I'm still hanging upside down and backwards. We stopped very suddenly because we hit the cornfield and that loose dirt, and realizing I'm hanging upside down, I'm still alive.
Jerry exited the plane into a cornfield where his section had broken off. But then he heard a baby crying and didn't think twice.
Next thing I remember, I'm back inside the wreckage on all fours over top the crying. And it turned out there was a baby buried in debris in an overhead bin, and it just grabbed her and shot out the plane the second time.
Jerry had saved infant Sabrina Michelson, who was reunited with her family shortly thereafter. But his friend Jay Ramsdell didn't make it.
I was in row 23 and Jay was in row 30, I believe, and that's about where the tail section broke off from us, and where Jay was in it, he got trapped and caught fire.
Jerry was one of 184 survivors, with little more than back pain as a result. 112 others died in the crash. After getting back to Denver and initially thinking he was lucky, the condition known as survivor's guilt washed over him.
I never saw that coming. I wanted to feel the opposite, and this guilt about not only surviving but not being seriously hurt hit me like I tell you, a ton of bricks, to be honest with you.
For the next year, Jerry battled anger and depression that affected both his personal and professional life. He quit his job at the CBA and started looking for guidance.
What's in store for me now? What am I supposed to do now that I survived this crash? And it really, for me, came back to first love, and that was broadcasting.
Jerry got a job doing play-by-play for the Minnesota Timberwolves in 1990, and then transitioned back to Colorado as the voice of the Denver Nuggets until 2010, when he took his current job in baseball. All along the way, he's been open about his experience as a motivational speaker, shaping his discussion around his survival and his faith.
I never had any kind of spiritual foundation at all, and I found Christ about a year after the crash, and that is the number one reason I think when I look at the crash and say something positive has come out of it, it's my relationship with Jesus these days is that reason, that number one reason.
That faith has been tested on numerous occasions since the crash, not the least of which came in 2008, when he learned the infant he had saved all those years ago, Sabrina Michelson, had passed away.
That hit me pretty hard, and it still does. It takes me back to the plane a lot when I think about her. She's buried in Mesa, Arizona. Spring training, I go out and visit her grave, and that brings a lot of the story back as well.
As each July 19th comes and goes, the passage of time puts Jerry further away from the crash. But the fact he's now lived nearly half his life since that fateful day makes it hard for him to imagine life without it. For better or worse, it's given him a foundation for how to live, to not take the wins and losses so seriously, to be a loving husband and father to his 2 children, and to help others across the country know just one thing: don't sit idly while life passes by.
I'm loving life. I'm enjoying life in a big, big way. If there's something more that's out there for me, that the Lord has for me, I'm going to try to do that best of my abilities.
And joined by David Brown. And obviously Jerry, when he's doing motivational speaking, has to talk about the tragedy. But in his everyday life, does it come up that much? Does he think about it a lot?
Well, when he was doing play-by-play for NBA games, he admits he didn't really think about it all that much just because of the pace of the game, the back-and-forth action. But now that he's doing baseball with all that downtime between pitches, all that downtime between innings, he says he does think about it, but says it's actually probably healthy for him instead of just compartmentalizing it all the time.
All right. And he's serious about this living life to the fullest, living the life you have, right?
Oh, absolutely. He practices what he preaches. In 2008, he actually became the head baseball coach at Metro State in Denver, said coaching was always something he wanted to try, gave that up when he couldn't find the right balance between broadcasting and coaching. But just 2 years ago, summer of 2015, he went on a 2-man bike race across America from California to Maryland. So as I said, definitely practicing what he preaches.
Nice. All right. Thanks a lot. David Brown. Up next, a Brookings man still putting in the miles who has put together one of the best running libraries in the country and found himself in the middle of some of the biggest running moments in American history.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by SCHEELS and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. Our next story is about a 90-year-old man who still runs every day, which is a pretty good start for a story. But Bob Bartling has also found himself and put himself in the middle of some of the biggest movements and the biggest moments in American running history. Bob Bartling is a runner, but it took him a long time to figure that out. He turned 90 years old this year, born in 1927. In 1967, he joined a wellness club at South Dakota State and could only run about 100 yards at the beginning. It took a month before he could finish 1 lap.
It took me another month before I could run a mile, 4 laps. And I thought to myself, well, I'm on my way.
Bob's first timed mile clocked in at just under 9 minutes. He was told that the club record for the mile was 6 minutes and 10 seconds, held by Hilton Briggs, the president of SDSU at the time.
I said, really? 6 minutes? 2 years later, I got the record. So that's my story on beginning running.
So at 40 years old, Bob Bartling fell in love with running. In 1969, Bartling and South Dakota State track coach Jay Dirksen started their own running club called the Prairie Striders. The Striders hosted their first marathon in Brookings in 1970 on June 21st, the longest and hottest day of the year. And Bob admits that is not the smartest thing they ever did.
We didn't have any water stops. Our water stations were a car, and we'd pull up alongside the poor runner and asked if they were thirsty. See, we just didn't know any better.
As the 1970s progressed, America experienced a cultural phenomenon, the running boom. Millions of people taking up the activity for the first time. Runner's World and other running magazines became a thing.
By then, there was Running Times came in 77. The Runner came in, fabulous articles, great authors. So we started getting all these resources. We'd buy 4x6 containers and 4x6 index cards and turn every page of our publications and index them.
That's right. If there is a word written about running in the last 40 years, Bartling has probably read it and made a note of it on one of his cards. He has a people file with more than 7,000 names and a subject file covering more than 1,000 running-related topics. And those files are the backbone of the library he started in 1978. Its first home was in the basement of the family furniture store in Brookings. And in 2015, it was moved to the lower level of Briggs Library on the SDSU campus. It is a treasure trove of history and information for those who enjoy running as much as Bob.
If we get some eccentric, like a former coach, will come in and he's retired, they'll spend hours and just be delighted with what they can find. The record for a tour is 4 hours and 45 minutes. And I had to kick the poor guy out at 6:45 so we could have something to eat.
Bartling loves the guests and the visitors and those who appreciate his labor of love. And yes, he knows that he is a little eccentric himself.
Well, I suppose some people would certainly fit me into that category. Yes, but it's a need. I've found out that it's a need that can be satisfied if a cataloger or an indexer will take time to do it.
Bartling also realizes that his index card catalog is beyond old school, but he would welcome the challenge of putting his system up against any cyber system.
Some neutral person could pick out the subject matter, and we'd have the computer genius and myself, we'd see who could find the item the soonest. I don't think the computer has a chance.
Well, he may be slowing down, but he's not stopping. Bartling insists that what he does now should be called shuffling instead of running. He's almost a Forrest Gump-like character, from his friendships with Hilton Briggs and famous marathoner Dick Beardsley to his involvement in the running craze in the 1970s. And there is one other moment in time when Bartling and good fortune get together. Sometime around 1970, his running club puts him in charge of finding new running shoes, something better than their Chuck Taylor basketball shoes. So using the family furniture store letterhead, he writes an order to a company called Blue Ribbon Sports for 10 pairs of their running shoes. They show up, and they are white leather with a red swoosh. And shortly after that,
I get this letter, and it's people from Blue Ribbon Sports. 5 of them have formed their own company called Nike. And did we want to be their dealers? We didn't know any better, so we said yes. And that's how our Nike running store took off.
that is an amazing story from a remarkable guy. And Bob says that his eyes and his head and his heart are all in good shape, and he's going to keep the library going as long as he can. You can find this episode and all episodes of Midco Sports Magazine on YouTube.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by SCHEELS and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.